introduction side of things, if we go to maybe Scott forward over to the slide where we've got our happy smiling faces on there. Mine actually probably needs to be updated a little bit more. I've got the whole post-COVID beard thing going on, but my role in the company, as was mentioned, is the director of our building lifecycle solutions team. So I get to work with everybody that does anything from building design through facilities management as it relates to structures. And turning that into what it means for the sake of this presentation is we've got a little bit of a heavier design style focus for this piece. We're not worrying so much of how much would say a construction professional be able to get out of the AEC collection. We've got a separate webcast for that one. So if you're thinking, darn it, we can get you signed up for that other one that is going to be a little bit more construction focused. I've been with the company for about 23, 24 years now. And really just trying to take that depth and breadth of knowledge to talk about all these things that we've got inside that AEC collection for you. Scott, for you?
Yeah, sure. So again, Scott Burke here. I've been with the company almost as long as Joe, almost about 20 years now, so it's been a while. And again, I'm really focused on the integrations between Autodesk desktop applications and the cloud, and how those cloud interactions and applications can help extend your workflows and allow you to manage things and collaborate better.
Awesome. So as it relates to today then, the agenda that we've got that we're looking at is a few different things. We're going to start off, if you could go to the next slide, I'm going to take some time and go through some different elements related to, do you really remember everything that is in the AEC collection? And you can see the rest of what we've got through the agenda items here, but the reason for that, as Scott and I were talking about this and looking into what do we need to be able to communicate to try and make sure that people can get all that they can out of this. And one repeated theme that kept on coming up as we were talking and thinking about this is that there is a distinct repeated thread of people not knowing everything that they have access to. I was on a conversation, I'll call it about 2 weeks ago, with a customer, and we were talking about implementing XYZ software, and then one of the items came up, and just as an offhanded comment, one of the people from the IMAGINiT side mentioned, yeah, and then you've got this Autodesk Docs thing which will help out with what the issue was to them. Sorry for being very vague there, but can't release that company name. And there was a little bit of a shock of, wait, what is that? What do we have? What's it do for us? So it may not be you specifically on this call. It might be that you know everything that's going on with that AEC collection, but it may not be that others inside your organization that ought to know some of these things, whether they're in IT or other levels of management, whatever, may not know everything that we really truly do have inside this AEC collection at our fingertips, and something that we can use. So a couple different items through there. So the next couple of slides here are talking about different things that we have available in the AEC collection. If you can go to the first one, Scott, these will be some of the more, I mean, the common phrase for it is going to be called like the hero product. It's the things that most people are more aware of inside the AEC collection. You'll look at that and say, yeah, I know what Revit is. I know what AutoCAD is, Civil 3D, Navisworks, and so on. But yeah, that being said, there's also that spot where, we've got Autodesk Docs listed here, and there's at least one customer, and Scott, I think you said you ran into it a few times as well, with other people just not realizing that they had Autodesk Docs, or to the point of what it actually meant to them. What could we get out of this? So there's a good number of things sitting through here. There's some of these will go into a little bit deeper level of information, but there's a lot. Plant 3D, AutoCAD, Civil 3D, all kind of sitting underneath that same AutoCAD with different industry tool sets, but then going in further to rendering options. I mean, we got rendering on your workstation through Revit or AutoCAD itself, through Twinmotion, through Civil 3D, through 3ds Max, or offload it to the cloud for rendering. That's gotten a little less attention lately. Now that one, access to it is there, but it can cost some additional dollars for credits to be able to process the rendering depending on what you're doing. But there's a lot of different types of things through here. But this isn't all of it. If we look at this being some of the major things that are available in the AEC collection, depending on how you look at the list of quote unquote things that exist in the software, if you go to the Autodesk website, for example, this will be most of the things that you would end up seeing on the main website talking about the AEC collection. But if you go to the next slide, there's a whole host of other things that exist that aren't necessarily getting the spotlight from the main Autodesk page or even the IMAGINiT page. Forget where that is at. There's the whole idea of AutoCAD architecture, AutoCAD MEP. I would argue, and Scott would agree with me, that most people, if you're using AutoCAD MEP, there's probably a Revit conversation we ought to have just to make sure that you're using the right tool or where are things going. And that being said, I had a conversation just yesterday with a customer that was basically saying, yep, we're not going there because our clients, the people that are leading the jobs, either the architects or the owners above them, are staying on AutoCAD for their reasons, so we have to stay on AutoCAD MEP to be productive. So, even though it's one of those things where it's been a fairly static technology for a while, maybe there are some still good reasons to stick with it. But keep an eye on all those things. The desktop connector for connecting to the Autodesk Cloud is part of that AEC collection. The character generator for 3ds Max is sitting out there. A basic level of vault. For most people, we'll say on the architecture side of design, building side of design, that's not going to be anything we'll really need to care about, but those types of things are out there. Recap Pro, which has a photo component to it, mobile applications for AutoCAD. All these things are inside that one package that we've got with the AEC collection. And we need to make sure we remember what types of things are out there. And if you hit the click again, Scott, there's over 36 different things that'll be listed as part of the AEC collection. If you have access to it in the manage.autodesk.com page, it says something like 50 some odd different components to it. I've noticed that there are some things in that list that are repeated lines, like I think in the version I was looking at, InfraWorks was listed twice. So I wouldn't fully call that number complete gospel, but there's a lot of things that are tied in with this AEC collection, and there's enough in there that this lead-in time that I've got, I wanted to make sure that we're thinking about them the right way, and we've got a fairly logical path of evaluating, do we need to use some of these things? So next slide over, if we go through and how do we want to evaluate things, hopefully this isn't any rocket science or shockingly new thing to anybody that's on this call or watching a recording later, but how do we want to do all of this? Well, it comes down to what's the benefit? It's all about an ROI analysis. What is going to be part of the collection that you need to use in your day-to-day world, or something like that Vault world? What's something that's just not important to you? How much is it going to cost to implement? In this case, we're talking about cost not necessarily as a hard dollars that are being spent to purchase the software. You've already got it. But in this case, the cost to implement is the soft cost, the time for training, the impact it has for the inevitable small decline in productivity as you're going through your learning curve, followed by the increase in productivity when you're done. So all of these types of things come through and need to stay on your mind as you're looking at it all. And the first part of it is understanding, what does that particular piece of software do? We are not, and maybe you're breathing a sigh of relief here, we are not going to be going through and identifying every piece of software in that list and determining, going through a description of what every single one of them does. If you've got a question about any of those things and wanting to be able to know what does software XYZ do, then reach out to us. Let us know what your questions are, and we can go through and have a conversation about any particular one. We are going to hit a few highlights through here. But the piece that I would suggest as a reminder through all of this is right here we're talking about, hardware, software tools, things that are, tools that we need to use. But sometimes when we're looking at all the different pieces and parts that are in the AEC collection, we're not figuring that we need to make sure we're paying attention to the person behind the mouse, the person behind the keyboard. Because as it says on the next slide, sometimes the bright tool that we need to make sure we're investing in is you. Whether it's your tool that happens to be a bunch of scissors at the end of your fingertips, or the tools that we're talking about are, just the soft skills that you have as an individual. Make sure we're investing in individuals, the staff, the people, call it the analog side of the business as opposed to the digital side. That's going to be important. So a couple things as examples of ways to look through it all. So we'll start off on the next slide, an example of, let's say you're an architecture firm. And again, rehash, hopefully it's just reminding you of some different ways to analyze and look through things. Should an architecture firm consider using vehicle tracking? And I actually have heard it many times that different people in different scenarios, even coworkers of mine, saying, yeah, vehicle tracking, it's really more of a civil 3D thing. And while that's largely true, I would say it's not 100% true. It's not completely true. So if we're looking at the types of things of vehicle tracking, do you work on buildings or project types? Maybe not the roundabout like the picture is showing there, but are you working in projects where you need to worry about will a semi-tractor trailer be able to back into a loading dock? Do we have the right amount of space for that? Do you work on warehousing type things where you need to make sure that there's a forklift able to make its way wherever it needs to go? Do you do a lot of different things with parking layouts? In my professional life before joining IMAGINiT, I did do parking layouts as part of what I did. And I don't know if there was somebody else checking my work behind the scenes as part of when I was just a newbie in the world. But tools to help out with doing those things would have certainly been helpful. So do you need to have that type of information to know, can a truck, a vehicle of any sort, make it into the place I've got? That's worth thinking about. And if the answer to that is yes, let's consider this. Now it's AutoCAD based, so the last bullet on the screen here of needing to establish a workflow for sharing data with Revit if you're a Revit house, we need to think about that because vehicle tracking is AutoCAD based, any flavor of AutoCAD. I had it running on top of AutoCAD MEP recently, but it can be as simple as go through some of the wizards that are inside the software to create a quick little detail sketch that includes the available turning radius for the vehicle that you care about, and just link that into Revit for just design validation. Could it be something where you're taking a Revit model and you want to send it to DWG so you can open that up in the vehicle tracking software and take it a little bit further down that direction? There's all sorts of things that are possibilities of how you need to do that, but that becomes part of the cost of implementing. You got to think about these things to understand what's going to be right. So on the next slide, a couple other types of questions that you might ask yourself as it relates to vehicle tracking. Do you have any templates for vehicles today that this would replace, or need to maybe integrate your template into this software? Do you currently outsource it, but really it'd be nice if we could do it internally and not have to outsource it anymore? Or we're going to stay with outsourcing it because I don't care. I don't want to care about these things. Whatever. Do you work on types of buildings that just aren't impacted by this? There may not be many types of buildings that are just flat out not impacted at all, but they do exist. And have you had any problems where you finished up construction and then realized too late that there was issues, or things weren't as good or as easy as they could have been to be able to make something happen? So different types of questions to ask. I'm not coming back and telling you you need to use vehicle tracking, but I would certainly say consider it, like some of the other types of pieces that are out there. Now, in contrast to a architecture firm, if we go to the next slide and look at MEP firm, there's the possibility of, should I'm an MEP firm, should I use Navisworks? Now that might be a little bit of a no-brainer. Many MEP firms are already using Navisworks to help out with clash detection. But with all the different options that are out there, is it something you're responsible for, and do you really need to? Now, this might be a case where if we're looking at the possibilities of what you can do with clash detection in Navis, are the clash detection capabilities just natively within Revit good enough, and you don't have to go to Navis and save yourself a step? That's a possibility. It's things that you need to be able to consider. Are you using Navisworks for visualization of what's going on? And is that the right tool to be able to do visualization? Most of the time, people are looking at Navisworks for clash detection, and it's that next level of capability within determining collisions between different elements. And if you're not using it now, but you want to be able to do more detailed clash analysis, then yeah, there would be some end user training for how to manage those clashes effectively and to deal with logging that you've resolved something, false positives, the whole shebang that goes from there, dealing with access panels or access requirements for different pieces of equipment that might not be included inside the drawings or models that you're working with. And if we go on to the next slide through there, different types of questions to ask yourselves that have an impact on the workflow that you use with clash detection or Navisworks overall. How complex are your buildings? Are they complex enough where this is really important, or overkill? Does this become some sort of a differentiator for yourself from other firms to be able to say, we can take a more active role in clash detection, and that is why you should choose us over Acme engineers down the street to do this work for you? How realistic do your visualizations of construction timelining need to be? We've got a separate webcast we did, oh gosh, it might be as much as a year ago now. It was a little while back, but it was using the twin motion visualization software to be able to get into more of a interactive visualization, higher graphic quality visualization of the construction timeline. Navisworks got things going a lot faster, but when you needed a prettier picture for the sake of presenting to the public, different things we can do through there. Other types of possibilities, getting into different things for specific pieces of software. Yeah, go ahead. Format. It's a very almost religious fanaticism that exists with people and their preferred software overall, not just with a format type of thing. But where's the possibility of saving in software investment by taking something that's inside the AEC Collection format versus something that you'd be needing to pay for, like, I don't know, SketchUp or whatever other types of softwares that are out there? It may be that other software you're using to help out with conceptual design or just design in general needs to be that other software because of certain reasons. But if it doesn't have to be, why not? It comes with access to an iPad app at no additional charge, more tight integrations with Autodesk software, tight integration with the Autodesk Cloud if you're doing anything there. So there's all sorts of neat things that can happen with the idea of format that go beyond that. I had mentioned it a little bit before, but going in the next one for Twinmotion, there was the announcement at the AU for Twinmotion being included in the package of software available to people that have the AEC Collection. And that's a phenomenal thing. IMAGINIT's had we've done a lot of work with Twinmotion training and other types of things over the years. We are a business partner with Epic, the people that write Twinmotion, doing different things with Unreal Engine. It's a phenomenal piece for visualization. Now, if you just need a quick scan rendering of what's it look like, and you could just do shaded with edges inside Revit, that picture at the bottom of the right side of the screen is fine, then don't worry about it. But when you do need to get something that looks better, you get to that spot where, is it real or is it Memorex? That's where the idea of Twinmotion does come around. Now, there's an extra little, decision matrix that does need to go on, where we've got both Twinmotion and Autodesk 3D Studio Max. And we've had Max inside the collection for a long old time, but what's the difference between the two? Why would you want to use Twinmotion? Why would you want to use 3D Studio in different scenarios? Well, over on the next slide, we've got a little bit of a comparison between the two applications. There are some advanced things that you can do inside 3D Studio that you cannot do inside Twinmotion. For what it's worth, the rendering at the top came from 3D Studio, the rendering at the bottom came from Twinmotion. I would argue that the learning curve for Twinmotion is substantially shorter than the learning curve for 3D Studio. Your workflows can be faster with Twinmotion than it is with 3D Studio because you're talking about a real-time rendering engine. Now, that being said, you might have to have a more powerful video card than what you've currently got in your workstation to really take advantage of some of those real-time rendering capabilities. But there's a lot to be said for that. The asset library for Twinmotion is massive, but maybe you need to do something with procedural maps. Maybe there's a little bit more that needs to be going into other types of outputs that you can really only more easily accomplish in 3D Studio. There's some things to think about through there, but I would say that our general tendency would be if you're going from just rendering in Revit to wanting to do something more, our recommendation would be let's take a look at Twinmotion first. And then if that's not solving it for whatever reason, extending further into the 3D Studio side. And then lastly, AutoCAD Mobile. There's a lot, the whole world these days is, have you talked about the web? Have I talked about web? Have I talked about the web? We've got some sort of SaaS solution that's live online and is through the web. It's whatever. It's out there, but AutoCAD is there too. Now, if you're a Revit-based house, maybe this isn't something that you'd be doing as much of, but AutoCAD on a mobile device, AutoCAD through a browser, there's some really nice things that can happen in there to help out with your company and having that data wherever you need to be and not needing a powerful computer running AutoCAD locally that you're this laptop with you wherever. So some nice things that you can do with that. Don't forget it's there. Is it right for you? Is it not right for you? Go through those list of questions to make sure you're on track with it, but let's stay there. With that though, I'm going to turn that over to Scott here because we're going to go a little bit more in depth. That was high level overview of a bunch of different things, but want to take it deeper into docs because again, as we were talking, this was that one piece that was very common across a number of different customers of not knowing what's possible, what they had access to. So Scott?
All right, thanks, Joe. Yeah, and again, with Autodesk Docs, what's unique here is just about every app within the collection can interact with Docs in some way. So I don't know if I call it a clearinghouse, but it pulls everything together, and it's in its own right an incredibly powerful tool for collaboration and communication, and that's really what it's facilitating. So when you look at Docs as a whole here, it becomes a single source of truth for the project collaboration where everyone that's in any collection anywhere can be invited to this across companies, different people can all be brought together into this one common workspace, if you will. It's also very powerful viewing. It's a universal viewer. It'll view most of the Autodesk file types. So if you don't have it installed, I don't have Inventor installed, I don't have Plant 3D installed, or even Revit installed. I just use AutoCAD, but I have a Revit model. I can put that file up here and view it. And actually, it also views many other file types that are not even Autodesk, right? It's a universal file viewer. It has powerful permissioning control. So you can be when you set up the site, you can control exactly what people can see, what they can do. It's very granular, and you can give people very little access, a lot, medium. It's really up to you. It also allows you to manage markups and create issues that are the communication tool to ask questions to other designers that you're working with, post issues, have conversations, but manage all of that in a singular cloud-based environment and have records of all these kind of communications that we've had. And you can also take files and put them through a review process. Hey, I've just finished my design. Does this look good? What do you think? And people can look at, mark them up. There can be responsible parties that you set up for those workflows and so on. And again, you also have the ability through the ACC mobile app to view the files. So you can view models walking around in the field. You can see the plans. You can see the models in 3D and have a lot of interaction there. So again, Docs helps overcoming the challenges in the fact that it's increasing your collaboration and making that more seamless. Again, it becomes that single source of truth for the project. And it also connects you to those 2D and 3D experiences for both the experienced 2D and 3D users, or someone who doesn't really use the software but needs to participate in the process, now has access to all this data, both in 2 and in 3D. So again, when we look at Autodesk Docs, it's about controlling your documents, document approvals, controlling your versions of the documents and so on there. So you have all that document control, strict permissions. You have good versioning control. You can compare versions, which I'll show a little bit of that. There's document approval workflows and so on. So these are all things that are, built into this product that basically comes with a collection. I was very surprised when Autodesk actually included that. So we're looking at the main interface right here. And it's very Windows Explorer-like, right? We have our project files and you create folders based on the specific needs of your projects, right? And then when you look at these folders, and I look at this one here, I can go into permissions and I can see which members of my team, administrators, have access. I see I've given the architect access to this folder. If I look at my MEP team folder as an example here. So everyone up here, these are administrators, so that's why we have a lot of access. And I brought the MEP company into that folder. So I'm able to go in here and add role-based permissions, name-based permissions, company-based permissions. So I could type in someone's name and just give that person access. Or I could give a project manager, so that's your role, right? So your project manager, and give a role-based permission. And then say, what can that person do? I can view and download, I can upload files and publish markups and so on there. So again, that's one of the strengths of Docs here, is that it tailors the experience to the people you invite to your project based on what their role or function is on the project. So it gives you a lot of that control. And again, getting the files up here is pretty straightforward. I can go into this area here and I'll just look at, where I have some PDF plans, and I could just hit this button here and upload a file from my computer. I can drag and drop files here. I can drag and drop files directly into this interface. And in many cases, the applications themselves will allow you to directly upload into the cloud. I can even access the cloud through Windows Explorer here. So if I'm just going to minimize that for a minute there. So we have something called the desktop connector that you connect in here, and it basically gives me access right here to my hubs and to my projects, but using Windows Explorer. So I can get into these same locations here and upload and download documents into this environment like I was using Windows Explorer. So it gives me a lot of very familiar access to this data, which is again one of its real strengths there. The next thing here, it has very powerful searching mechanisms. So once you're in a project here, you can hit search, and I can search the current folder or all the folders in this project, subfolders. I can look for content. So the content of things that are in these files, I can look for files only. I can look for file types only, search, DWGs as an example. Only select the current version, just the version 1 or the latest versions, right? Things like that. Last time it was updated, documents that have been approved. Right here, show me only approved documents. 7 of them match there, and I can hit the search. And here are all the files, in, depending on the folder, that will be certain things that are approved or meet all of these things. I'll turn off DWGs there. And I can run a search again. Now it's showing me all the files that have gone through a review process that have been approved with comments, or just show me documents that were rejected for some reason. So these are documents here that went through a review process and they were not approved, right? Things like that. So very powerful searching capabilities within this environment, which is another strength of the tool here, of course. So the next thing here really is that it's a universal viewer, right? So if I go here, I'll go into my general project documents right there, and I can take a look at, of course, let's start with some of the more common things like AutoCAD. So I can open up an AutoCAD file. I don't know anything about AutoCAD. I don't have AutoCAD installed, yet I can open the file. In the case of AutoCAD here, I can go ahead and I can change my view here to sheet colors black for AutoCAD viewing. That makes a lot more sense, right? And this isn't just a viewer. I mean, I can temporarily go into the layers and turn off the things that I don't want to see right here. So I go down and turn the walls off if that's what I needed to do, and so on. So a very important aspect of this. I also have the ability with, and this would be true with AutoCAD, Revit, and PDFs, to come in here and compare versions. So I want to compare version 1 against version 2 to see what changed. So I can compare those versions against each other, and I see everything in red here is the new, the blue is the old. So now I'm not dependent on someone telling me what they changed. I can just go in here and instantly see all the changes in my document. I can even go into the side-by-side mode here and see here's the original right here on the right side. And as I move my slider across, I start seeing the changes that have happened in this document. So this alone is one of the most powerful features, I think, in the product, is that ability to compare, 2D against, 2D drawings to see what's changed. I can view my PDF plans, same thing. I can do that same exact type of comparison there, so I won't bother doing that again. In this case, it's Revit, so maybe I want to change my settings to a white background again, right? Or just a PDF file, I should say. So of course you can do those types of things. If I went to view a Revit model, right? So I go down here and I'll go to my Revit model. I can view that. Again, don't need to know anything about Revit. I have access to the full 3D model. I can pick this door here and I can get my properties and figure out what type of a door that is. I could take sections of this with, again, no real skill here. Anyone can really figure this out, or with a very little amount of training, you're able to go in and do these types of things here. I can rotate. I can get information on this particular unit in there, and it's a freezer island, and all the data that's in Revit would be available to me, right? Without, again, having to have any of those high-level skills to manipulate or open a Revit model. Maybe I work in AutoCAD exclusively. Someone provided me a Revit file for access. I can open it without having the software installed, right? And I can also do comparisons here with Revit, but because Revit is model-based and there's a lot more intelligence there, so I'll compare these 3D views against each other, and I'll compare them. So it gives me a deeper analysis here. So it actually compares the two, but based on model. So I can say these are all the elements that have been added to this Revit model here. These are all the elements that were deleted in some way. And right here, these are elements that were modified to a certain level. So I can even pick the door here and figure out, oh, it was moved 7'7" in the Y direction. It used to be there. Now it's here. This wall right here, how was that modified right there? It was moved from here to there. So again, the comparison tool is incredibly powerful. And again, when I'm in the Revit model, I could have also gone into the 2D views and viewed the sheets and done comparisons at the sheet level as well, right? Another tool I like here is, especially in Revit, is I can say, hey, if I was standing here, looking there, what would I see? That's what I would see. Gives me some navigation controls. And now I can walk around in the model. And actually what I'm doing here could be done in the mobile app as well, meaning walking around, viewing these things. I could do this in the field and look at a model. I can, pick this object here and get the properties for the ceiling if that's what I wanted to right there, just under that there, and so on. And then go back to the plan view if that's what I need to do. So again, just a lot of really powerful viewing for, any of the Autodesk formats. I mean, I can go in here and here's a format project and I could open up that. I don't know how to use format. People on my team do, and they wanted to share this model with me. And now I can go in and see my conceptual design model or my early design stages before I even get into Revit. And then later on in format, they could push this into Revit and start doing a real project directly from it. But again, this is just my conceptual tool, very similar to SketchUp, almost identical, has all the same type of features, just it's built in Autodesk Collection, AEC Collection. Why not use it? So again, I can open up an inventor file and I could look at the IDW file to see the sheets that would be in an inventor project, of course, right? And I have access to all the sheets right there. So I don't need to know anything about inventor to have that. I could see individual parts that they want to share with me, or maybe they created a table I wanted to use in Inventor that I want to eventually bring into Revit, but I wanted to view it and look at it. So I have those abilities here. So again, it's that kind of universal viewer, but it's also for non-Autodesk formats. For instance, here's a MicroStation file. I can open up the MicroStation file and view that. I don't know anything about MicroStation yet. I don't have it, haven't used it in years. I can open the file, measure things, read this. I can turn layers on or off, which in MicroStation, I think they just called them levels, basically, those similar types of things. So like I said, I have that ability to, get into all these different formats. For instance, I could go in the SketchUp. If you prefer to use that, go ahead. Upload the SketchUp file, and I can share that with individuals here. And I have, I can see it, rotate it. I could walk around in the SketchUp model right here using my navigation tools here. And here I am walking around in the SketchUp model. So even though I'm using SketchUp and it's not Autodesk, I'm able to pull that right into this environment and use that directly here. Again, sharing all this information with everyone. Heck, let's go ahead and open up an Excel file. I can open up Excel. I can even manipulate the file. If I have an Office 365 license, then I can actually go in here and I can actually edit this file directly in this environment without even downloading it. Or I could go down to my specifications here and hey, let's go ahead into my fire alarm systems and here's a Word file. And I can view the Word file in here. I can also go in and I could directly edit the file here and then compare versions, see how I change them between each other and so on. So again, that's one of, I think, like the superpowers, as I like to call this tool here, is it brings everything together. All the well-known, this 50 or 60 different file formats that this can open. I mean, I can go directly down here to Navisworks as well. And I can either view individual NWCs or my combined Navisworks file that someone sent up. They took a model, they brought all the stuff together from all these different, pieces of software that were not Autodesk based, and they brought all the model together for me here. And again, this could have been Plant or other non-Autodesk products that made up this Navisworks file, and they brought it all together for me, saved it as an NWD file, and now I have access to all the structure, the MEP, everything in here. This could have been made up of 16 different models or file types that were not Autodesk. Someone brought them together in Navisworks, pushed them up here, and are now able to share that with me. So another thing that's, I think, really powerful here is the issue management system. And this is probably one of the most important parts of the entire cloud, is the ability, at least in this case, via AutoCAD, Revit, and PDFs, I am allowed to go in and create issues and mark things up and assign them to individuals. So again, if I take a look down here and I'll go into my PDF plans. And I have issues that I've created here. So right here, this is a client feedback. The client wanted a new display in this area. This is what the client wanted to add right here. So there's a comment there. I assigned it to someone. I can give it a description. I can put a due date on it. So if I need something changed, I need the door moved, or I need another door added in somewhere. So maybe I come in here and I need another door right here added in, right? So I can go ahead and I can add a door in. I could create an issue and say, hey, right there, it's a design issue. And I'll come in here and say, hey, need a door. So I'll quickly come in here and say, title here, need a door here. We're still in our design phase. And I'm going to put a description here. I'm just going to copy the title. So need a door here as per new egress code requirements, right? So that's my message there. So who needs to do this on my team? So I can come in here and assign this. Hey, I'll assign this to maybe Joe here on the call. So I'll add him in as a person who needs to basically do this. And is there a location so I can just sort things? Sure. I could say it's a location. It's in, let's see, the employee lounge. There we go. And it's a due date. Hey, could you get this done by next Friday on the 12th, right? I could also even add reference documents here. I could go to files and say, oh, well, here, let me give you a spec on the door. So I can go into my specifications and give you some specification information about the types of doors that we need to use. And I'll add that as a reference for Joe. So when he receives this, he already got a notification that he's required to do this, or I'm asking him if he could do that. When he gets done with it, he marks this thing here as a status. He'll mark it as pending here. And when he goes to pending, I get a notification that it's done, and then I will close it once I've confirmed that it's been completed. And like I said before, I'm just going to use freehand because it's a little quicker here. And I'm going to use my freehand tool, and I'll just draw where I want the door. So maybe I want this door right here, right? And I'm just being kind of quick and lazy about this, so like that. So that's where I want my door. And I can even, if I accidentally draw something I don't want, I can pick it, I can delete it, I can move it around. I could put a bubble around this just to kind of indicate that's the area of change. I could add a call out text. I don't need to do that right now. You can see it in other places already here. And the key here is once I've done this, is this a personal markup just for me? Or I can pick all these objects and say I'd like to publish them, which means everyone on the team now has the ability to see these markups. And on the left here, see, there's a markup tracking tool. I can see who created the markup and when. This will take me to all those markups. I can see the issues that are on this particular drawing here, and as I select these, it will take me to the different issues, make sure they're being dealt with. There's a closed issue, that one's been closed and so on, and dealt with, so I have the record of all that. But the real key here is that it's all listed here. So I have my master issue list, and I have every issue that I'm working on in this project is listed here. And again, this is all based on permissions. You only see what you're supposed to see. I think that's one of the most powerful things here is that it gives you that permission control. So you only see issues that you're working with. Again, the filtering tools are incredibly powerful here, where I can say, just show me issues that are design based. Just show me issues, the status that are open, right? Just show me issues that might be in a punch list package that I was creating, and safety equipment or any of those types of things, right? So I have a lot of filtering abilities here and the ability here to basically export these out as a report. You know, I need a door right here. I could either export out many of these things or just take this one issue and basically right here, export it as a PDF report. I could schedule these reports. So once a week, all overdue issues are sent to the person whose the issues are overdue for those issues and so on. All my reports are listed here that I've ever run in this project. You can see this one here is just basically processing right now. And once that's done, I can come in here and I could download a report either of a single issue or multiple issues, like this one's pointing to multiple issues. And I would get a little screen cap of where the issue was created, details of the issue, and so on. Very powerful reporting mechanisms, you know, basically built into the product here. And another tool here real quickly is if I'm looking at a design file that I'd like to get through a review process, whether it be Revit or whatever, right? I can come in here and let's say I have a Revit model that I want to submit for a review. I want people to make sure, is this look good, right? So I'll take this architectural model, I can right click on that and submit for a review. And what type of review process would I like it to go through? So I want to go 50% design review. All right, so I just go 50% is a name of the review. For Arch Design, just an official name for this particular review, and I submit it. And it goes to the next person. I could notify the reviewer here. That person gets notified. Here's a list of my reviews. There's an open review. The next person in line, so Scott Burke is the next person who needs to review this. They would start the review. So that means they've accepted the review. They could open the file. They could mark the file up, add comments, things like that. And when they're done, they can decide what the approval is. So approved 50%, rejected or approved with comments. So maybe this is simply approved, right? So I could submit my review. I've approved it right here. I mean, you decide how many steps, what the review status statement is. I submit my review. It's done. It's the final review. And in this case, when the review is done, any markups in it will be copied forward, and this file is now being copied to this folder. So now it's being copied into the approved folder. So I was in the place where it was uploaded for design review, And then I told it when approved, I want it to go into the approved design folder, right? So it go into my design reviews here. So this is the approved drawing. It might have been version 6 in the other file, but it's the first version that's been approved here. And I see the review status right there of you reviewed for construction or whatever you want, any type of review process, you have this ability here. And as I mentioned before, though I can't really show it right here, you have access to the files, not the markups and issues. You don't have access to those for docs, but you can see the files. You can walk around and visualize all the models. So a really powerful tool that's included with the AEC collection. And like I said, everyone can use this. Anyone using just about any tool in that collection can push their files up here, share them with other team members, comment on them, and so on, push files through review processes and so on. Again, and this is free, it's included with the product. So I've always been very impressed that this is something that's now included with the AEC collection. All right.
Hey, Scott, actually, before we go on from here, it's one of the questions, but you know,
Sure.
hey, it's relevant at the
Yeah,
moment.
sure.
That's all things that we can do if you've got a license of docs. But there is a question that came in. What about people that you want to share files with that do not have a docs license? Like they're outside your company and you want to share files with people that don't have
Right.
them. I mean, to some extent, they have to get and sign up for a free Autodesk ID. But after that, there's like public sharing links or
Correct.
things along those lines, right?
Yeah,
So glad
correct.
that I
So
didn't
in the
say something
system,
wrong.
now it is a, yeah. Oh, no, no. And right
Okay.
here with this file, I can absolutely come in here and basically I hit share and I have an ability here to share with anyone in the link. And it does create a download link for someone. And the system can email it. I can send them the link. Now, the key here, though, is if they're going to download this Revit file, they will need Revit to view it. If I give them an AutoCAD, they will need AutoCAD file to view it. If I send them a PDF, everyone has a PDF viewer, right? So that's the only caveat here is I can absolutely let someone who does not have a license access any file that I'd like to share with them. And I can set an expiration date on these links, which right here, so you set your expiration date. The manager of the system can set the maximum sharing duration. Maybe they set it to 60 days, but I only want to share it till the 26th and the link won't work anymore. And I can absolutely share that file with anyone right now. I can either type in an email or just get a link. I copy that link and I can paste it somewhere, but that file is now officially shared. And at right click, if I right click on that, I can delete the shared link too. But a key is it does not bring them into the system, so they would need the software that created the file to view it. Now, there are some viewers, there's AutoCAD viewers that are free, there are Navisworks viewers that are free, obviously PDF is free. Even though you'll have to install Revit, you can use Revit as a viewer without a license, you just have to install it and you can use it in viewer mode. So that's the only thing is that you will need the authoring software to view it unless you have some sort of viewer, but you can absolutely share files in here with anyone and a license is not required. Or you can also purchase docs licenses by themselves if you'd like to. They're relatively inexpensive and you can share it with a client for 6 months. And then when that project is done, give it to some other client or other sub-trade that you want to work with. So a lot of firms they'll go out and buy a bucket, if you will, of docs licenses that they share with their outside parties who don't have collections for a duration of the project and then pull it back and give it to another person on another project later on. So those are kind of your options there for working within the system for those who don't have access.
Cool. Well, thank you. And that could be a project-based cost that you recuperate or not or whatever. So cool. So all those things that we've talked about, if we want to turn around and say this is great, but how do we prioritize what we ought to do? Here's an example. You take the numbers in here and make it whatever you want to, but I took the idea of grabbing some of those pieces of software and saying, should I implement this? And gave some factors that I wanted to consider up at the different columns, the benefit to the company, the effort to implement, how quickly it implements, changes to workflow, positive changes to workflow, I guess you could say, and then the total cost for that item. In this case, I was considering the hard costs of it, and have those all factor out and say, based off of that, here's the weighting for how important any of these things are to me based off of what I said were my priorities. So say the twin motion one, it's the benefit of 4 times 2 plus -2 for the effort, -2 for implementation speed, +4 for workflow, 0 for cost. It's a weighting of 8. In this case, just throwing numbers out, it gave the example of docs is probably a really good thing for us to implement faster because it's quick to get up and going and very limited downtime or impact to productivity as we're going along. But in the same sense, for me in here, Format Pro just didn't matter. So that's going to be one of the last things along with Navisworks for me to implement. Actually, I guess InfraWorks would be the most, because pretending I'm architecture or MEP and I don't care about the things that InfraWorks does at this time. Maybe later, but not now. So take an idea of these types of things to help prioritize what you've got going on through there. Other types of things you could put in as columns to consider, and you can see that list of items on the right-hand side of how would this be received? How painful are the problems that it would give us as a benefit? So all sorts of different types of things that could fit in here. If there's something that's not mentioned and you've got your own qualification criteria, go for it. But this is just a nice way to get an idea conceptualized as a number, and it's really easy then to compare numbers and say, according to us, this is what we need to do first. And then the kicker after that is actually doing something. So the last piece here before we get into final Q&A is just do something. If you could go ahead and go over to the next slide. It's this process we have here is IMAGINiT's take aim process, applied implementation methodology, but it's the typical, try it out, develop the definition, define the definition, maybe is a better way to go. Develop the solution, test it out, and if it tests out good, roll it out into production. Nothing major. This is the process that we use in many services engagements. It's nothing, no secret sauce necessarily involved in it. It's just a matter of defining and being intentional with your effort after this. And that's often the hardest part. We've got an idea of what we want to do. Now we actually need to take action on those items and make something happen. That's more often where things fall apart. So use something like this, use your own methodology, whatever, but take it from concept to action so that something happens. Whether you come to us for help with the education side, take care of it on your own, whatever it might be. Get our Productivity Now thing for e-learning and learning about all these different items. Possibilities are endless, just do something. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and we'll continue opening up for questions that are out there. We got 5-6 minutes, something along those lines before we get to the top of the hour.